qualitative data collection, design and analysis. So if you decide you want to do qualitative data collection, you then, again, you need to justify the reason of why you're doing that. But there are some advantages. So any sort of data can be qualitatively studied. We can talk about, obviously, written, so transcripts of interviews, but also film or audio data or still pictures, online content. There is an awful lot of information that can be analyzed qualitatively, but also open-ended questions in surveys can also be analyzed qualitatively, or if you collect interview responses through emails, so you can also analyze that. What is important with qualitative data collection is that you think about how you're going to collect it. So let's say you decide to do interviews. The question is, why are you doing interviews? Why are interviews better over focus groups, for instance, or let's say online data collection, or other types of qualitative collection would be, let's say, that you could think about observations. So, for instance, if you want to analyze the efficiency of boardroom meetings, how would you do that? You might just sit in a boardroom and you might take your notes and then analyze the behavior, the answers, those sort of things. So there's different types, okay? Once you have decided how you're going to collect it, you need to think about the design of it. So let's say you choose interviews, you need to develop an interview schedule. Now that interview schedule needs to be based on your research questions. So from the insights that you have gathered through market research, for instance, in your business plan, or through the current state analysis of the company in your consultancy project, or your literature review in the research project, you will have to develop research questions. And similar to the quantitative ones, where the research questions are the assumptions or hypotheses, you will then try to think about how you're going to interrogate them, how you're going to meet them. So quite often research questions are quite analytical in the way of how they're phrased, and you wouldn't necessarily ask them, your respondent, or the participants in this case. But you would then have to think about, what questions can I ask in order to meet my research question. So it could be that a research question, in order to answer it, in your interview schedule, you have 2 or 3 questions that you will ask. And the same is for observations. You need to design that. What are you actually looking for? What are the objectives of that observation? They can link in with the research observations of your project themselves, but there will be particular ones that are very particular for the collection that you were doing. So going on from that, you then can think about, how am I going to analyze that? So let's say you do interviews with focus groups. So you either record them by video or audio, and you most likely transcribe them. You don't always have to do that, but in most cases that's the case. So let's say you have collected between, let's say, 7 and 10 interviews, or you have done 3 to 5 focus groups, just as a number. And we can talk about online data when it's applicable to you, more specifically, how much you should look at. Or you use case studies, for instance, then you might have 3 to 5 case studies. You then transcribe that, for instance, and you start analyzing it. What we suggest is a very basic approach. It's called the thematic approach. And I will upload the document as well that can help you to understand the step-by-steps that are required for that. It's a document by Brown and Clark, and it gives you really an idea into thematic analysis. So that's that, and then you have to have a discussion on what you have found and relate it back to your current state analysis, to your market research or your literature review. So that the work with interviews and focus groups or qualitative data collection is more heavy towards the analysis side of things, probably. Whereas if the questionnaire, it's more heavy to the front, because you really need to design it robustly and then you interrogate it statistically. So that's the differences between the two.